I guess this bodes well for Browns quarterback Shedeur Sanders, as there's an insider who's been at practice, has seen all the throws, and says Deshaun Watson looks just awful out there. Zach Jackson took to 92.3 to Fan, and he said Deshaun Watson has looked absolutely putrid here in these through mini camp and mandatory OTAs, and that Shedeur Sanders should be the starting quarterback, and he's not much of a Shedeur Sanders fan. So to hear him say this, man, Deshaun must have been really, really bad. We got to get into it. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, hype the video. That'd be greatly appreciated as always. We got to get right into things. So this is courtesy of the Dogs Cleveland Browns podcast. It says Zach Jackson just delivered a brutal evaluation of Deshaun Watson on 92.3 The Fan. He was quoted as saying, "I think it's a fair spring conclusion to say he's the same player he's been here. Inconsistent player, not accurate, bad decisions. He's just not any good. There's no point in the Cleveland Browns who are playing him for the future to be playing him." So Deshaun Watson got absolutely annihilated by Zach Jackson. And hey, maybe this is good for Shedeur Sanders. Let's listen to the whole thing here, man.
What that did almost seemed to sabotage the entire room. What would your answer be?
That's the simplest answer of this whole thing. It would not affect this quarterback competition at all. This quarterback competition is Deshaun Watson versus Shedeur Sanders to either be the short-term or in Shedeur's case, long-term quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson, not in the plans. Dylan Gabriel, not in the plans. Taylor Green, almost certainly not in the plans. Where do you stand on Shedeur? I don't know. But Brendan Sorsby would be a red shirt. Brendan Sorsby would be a project. Brendan Sorsby would be adding an asset at a reduced price that could potentially pay off. It has nothing to do with Deshaun versus Shedeur on July 30th or even August 14th. Nothing at all.
What are the possibilities he gets suspended? Do we know? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a real possibility.
Because everybody's bringing up Butte.
Yeah, but he was never, this was post. He was not penalized by the NCAA. Terrell Pryor was penalized by the NCAA, but Terrell Pryor was not, he was suspended. He was not expelled from college football. So there's no apples to apples comparison here. And that Terrell Pryor thing was so long ago when you think about it. I actually covered his pro day at a high school in the middle of the Western Pennsylvania hills, and that was straight bizarre. The Sorsby Pro Day is going to be interesting because that's how you posture here, right? Is you send a whole group to it, whether you're interested or not, or you just send one area scout and try to make teams think you're not interested. So that July 10th Pro Day is going to be fascinating.
Zach, we had a clip of yours from your podcast, a terrific podcast, and a great theme song to start the podcast. I know you've gone through a few of them over time. You said that Deshaun Watson has had the best throws of camp, but then would follow them up with some of the worst throws you'll ever see, which is not all that different from what we've seen for the last 4 years from Deshaun Watson. So what does that mean for Shedeur?
Yeah, well, I think my only spring conclusion, there's not really any conclusions. This was a new offense. This was a new environment. Deshaun's playing for the first time. But I think it's a fair spring conclusion to say he's the same player he's been here, which is an inconsistent player, not accurate, bad decisions. He's just not any good. And there's no point in the Cleveland Browns of 2026 who are playing for the future playing him. I think and I hope that they're starting to come around to that thought. But he's just not ever going to take that next step. Deshaun Watson of 2020 is Deshaun Watson of 2020. The Browns made an incredibly bad trade, and it is absolutely comical that he would still be on the team, let alone still be in the mix. And all spring football did for me was confirm that.
Zach Jackson, strong stuff on the Wise Heart Right, We Make It Right, Call Kyle Right hotline. All right, so by the way, I want to ask you this. Is this we got to get the thought out of being a one and done when it comes to Todd Monken, correct?
You would like to think that, Ken, and you would hope that. I don't have any idea where this thing is going to go. And like I said, I do hold out a level of optimism for a Todd Monken offense that clearly has upgraded at receiver and in many ways is getting a fresh start. I think Judkins and Fan and both have a chance to be really near top of the league players. And, they needed to upgrade the receiving core. It wasn't going to be hard to upgrade the receiving core, but to me, they pretty clearly have. So I have optimism for Todd Monken, but we're going to argue, and people are going to argue with us about, are they tanking? Are they trying to win? What are they doing? I mean, they answered that question. They traded Myles Garrett. They realized where they were and that it's a long way out. And I think over the last 15 or so months, they've done a really good job of cleaning up their own mess. But this is a restart, and this is adding a new core and all of these things. So, yeah, I would think that he's going to be here, and he was chosen to be a part of it. But I don't really know how this season is going to go. I feel like the goal is not to win, and the goal is going to be interesting with a truth-telling head coach and a young offense and a lot of moving parts, and maybe older guys who start to really realize that the goal isn't to win.
Zach, quickly before we have one other thing I want to get to you about. How are the Browns going to recover from losing their vice president of strategy, who your colleague deemed one of the smartest people in football, Andrew Healy, to the Vikings?
I think they're still going to have the biggest front office and the biggest analytics department in the league. I think they would need 25 more deletions for that to be in question. So, I think that the show's going to go on in Berea when the lights come back on there in a few weeks.
All right, so LeBron James right now is celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the championship overseas. I don't know when that party is ending. I also don't know where he's going to end his NBA career.
Yeah.
I said it would be kind of sad for him to end with the Lakers, but it seems like that is what more and more people seem to think he's going to do, or even Golden State. How do you feel about what could be his swan song?
But being in on the pursuit to me is not gray at all.
How high would you be willing to go right off the rip?
I probably have to start with the 3. There's much more nuance to the conversation, but I just don't think any of the teams that are like the Browns, Cardinals, Jets, Dolphins, right? And they're all different, but they're kind of similar in this vein. I don't think anybody's going there with a 2, the way that the league values high 2s right now, and especially with next year's draft coming up. So I think if you want to say, hey, we really, really want to get him, it's the 3. If it's, hey, we're making a bid because we're interested and we don't hate the idea of or a plan that we've put together for how to proceed from here, then it's certainly one of the 4s, because they also own the Giants' 4th-round pick. And then both of those, the way the supplemental draft is structured, are considered Tier A for how the lottery breaks out.
What are you hearing, Zach, about the character stuff when it comes to what he is being accused of and what he has fessed up to and the investigations that were going on? When it originally came out, I thought he was being accused of throwing games, and this was the Black Sox scandal. And now, about a month removed from that, and hearing his agent and his lawyer, and then seeing more of the information that's come out, I just don't think it's anywhere near as bad as what originally people were getting carried away with.
Yeah, I'm not going to claim that I'm deep in the background at this point. I'm not sure who is, but I reached out to 2 people who I reach out to in the league and ask, where I stand here. And one said, absolutely, I'm not doing it. And one said, absolutely, the Browns have to do it. So, I think that's probably the wide variety. And if the Browns stance ends up being exactly what Todd Monken spewed in that awkward press conference that was happening while Myles Garrett was getting traded, I understand that. But this is a quarterback prospect, and it's not based on what he's done. It's based on what he could be. And you hear Daniel Jeremiah and Todd McShay talk about him in terms of what he could be, and you look at the positional value and the circumstances here. If you're anything short of absolutely hating the circumstances, then you have to make a bid. And I guess in 3 or so weeks, we'll find out.
All right, the actual tape, and we're joined by Zach Jackson right now on the hotline from The Athletic. The actual tape and his dimensions, that stuff, you can understand why, even though he has been a roller coaster of a player and he struggled mightily in the last 2 Novembers or whatever, he was still going to be the highest paid or one of the highest paid quarterbacks in all of college football this year. And I mean, he's 6'3" and can run and has a more than sufficient arm. Those things will pop. You can understand why teams would salivate.
Yes. He's very much an unfinished product as a player, and now quite obviously as a person. But yeah, he was always going to make more money in college football this year than he was, and he was going to have a chance to work on those things and be surrounded by good players. And I mean, Texas Tech is still probably the Big 12 favorite. I don't know this for sure. Ken and I